Hello and welcome to the Apple, iPhone, iOS Voiceover Compatible Games interview series. I'm your host, Aaron Spelker. Now, Apple, iPhone, iOS Voiceover Compatible Games is a group that is focused on all things mobile accessibility gaming. And through our interview series, we'll interview game developers as well as accessibility influencers. And today we have a game developer of a new game that just came out just a couple weeks ago. It's called Beyond the Chiron Gate. The developer's name is John Ayliff. And John, welcome to the interview series.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So John, I always like to just kind of start off as I interview people to just, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into creating games.
Okay, so I've been, I enjoy programming and writing, and so making text-based games like this is a natural medium for me. And I worked in the games industry for about 10 years before leaving to go solo. So I've got all the experience from that to draw on.
What kind of, in the games industry, what kind of games did you work on?
I was working as a content developer for RuneScape.
Okay, nice. And that's what you did for the entire 10 years, or did you do a couple different things?
No, that's all I did.
Nice. And so you learned all your, that's kind of your background in learning, the behind the scenes coding of how to make a game. It's all learned on the job there.
Yes.
Did you do schooling in computer programming as well?
No, I'm all self-taught.
All self-taught. All right. And so you've created this game, Beyond the Chiron Gate, and probably best if I just let you tell people a little bit about what the game is and what you're trying to do. I love it. And, just before you get started, it is to me a mashup of three of my favorite things, which is Star Trek, the TV show, The Expanse, and the TV show Away, that starred Hilary Swank. If anybody's seen that, only went on for one season, but I really enjoyed that. So those three things are kind of meshed together in this game that you created. So why don't you kind of tell people a little bit more detail about it?
Well, I haven't seen this Away, but the first two of those are definitely influences. It's a text-based roguelike about space exploration. And so the inspiration was, I am a big fan of strategy games of the kind where you are building up a nation or a space empire or something. And so you send out your ships to explore the world and you colonize it. But the bit I like best about those games is the very start where you're exploring. And so my idea was to take that part and make a whole game out of it. So it's, you've got your spaceship, you send it to star systems, you explore them, you're trying to gain this abstract currency called data, which you can use to upgrade your ship. And your objective is to find the mysterious gate builders before you run out of gate trips. And it is very much inspired by Star Trek in that it's about peaceful exploration for the sake of exploration. It's not about exploration as a prelude to colonization or resource extraction. Mm-hmm. And it's inspired by The Expanse in that it's meant to be a realistic feeling game where you're not routinely doing things like tractor beams and replicators, and faster than light travel is this weird thing that you can't do reliably. I'm hesitant to say it's realistic because then you'll get space nerds getting mad at me. But what I'm going for is realistic feeling.
Right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, and kind of like The Expanse, I mean, a gate has been discovered that allows us to venture to different solar systems and discover new planets. And as you said, the gate is unstable and you need to figure out how to stabilize it before you use it up and it collapses on itself.
Yes.
So there's some pretty high stakes. Now, you said you hadn't seen the TV show Away.
No.
It's Hilary Swank's in it. It's a show where they are on a journey to Mars, like the first journey to Mars, and every episode something disastrous is happening. They have to solve one catastrophe after another catastrophe, and people are dying, and it's just loads of high stakes. And so that's why I kind of lumped that in there, because when you're playing this game and you're sending people out to explore these missions, I mean, space is dangerous, and nothing necessarily goes the way you hope it will go.
Yeah, there's lots of things that can go wrong, and you're a long way from home, and the tension is meant to be about balancing balancing how much you can learn from the system before the cascading problems destroy your ship or kill your crew members.
Yeah. And you have found many different ways to do that. I've experienced a lot of ways whereby people
Yes.
get injured and die, and or just leave my ship for some other reasons, which I won't spoil. But yeah, I mean, it's really, for me, when I played it, and what I just kind of instantly fell in love with it because it really ramps up the tension. I mean, you are building up your astronauts each time they go out. They gain information and experience, and they get better at their job, which makes it a little easier the next time you go out. But a rogue asteroid or a bad lab experiment can suddenly put them in jeopardy of not making it home, and all that hard work and investment that you put into them suddenly can disappear as they perish on their mission. So I really enjoyed the stakes. I found myself very anxious about each time I was going out. So from kind of what you mentioned, I think you kind of explained this, but I mean, it's just your kind of love of this genre that made you decide to make this specific game.
Yes.
And what kind of made you decide to just go out on your own? I mean, you had probably a stable job somewhere for 10 years. What made you break out and do your own thing?
It was I kind of felt like I'd done all I had to do in that one job. In 10 years is a long time to stay in the same job in the games industry. And also my partner got a job in Canada, and so we moved there, and I left the job to go with her there. Yeah, I wanted to do my own thing. I was a little frustrated at always doing the same kind of work in one RuneScape.
Now, so you go out on your own, you decide to, create your own game from kind of concept to I'm putting it out on the App Store. How long did that take you to pull together?
Oh dear. With the caveat that it wasn't the only thing I was doing for this time, it took about, I think, 3 years.
3 years. And I mean, there is a lot of content within the game. I mean, have you ever kind of calculated, how many words are in that game? I mean, it's got to be hundreds of thousands of,
I wish I could. Unfortunately, I have no good way of separating out the actual text from the code to get an accurate word count, but it's on the region of a novel, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And ever changing, as we'll talk about in a second. What program did you use to kind of create this particular game? What's the engine behind it?
It is written in Twine, which is a free tool for making hypertext-based games. Specifically, I made it using the Sugar Cube story format, which is good for this kind of complex coding. A lot of the actual code is in JavaScript. And that's really it.
Now that's really interesting. So I think I told you a little bit about myself. So I am newly blind. I went blind 3 years ago, and probably 8 years ago, I would say, I decided like, oh, I want to dabble in making a game just for fun, not to really sell or anything, but just for the, can I do it sort of thing. And I settled on Twine and started doing Twine because I liked kind of the visual presentation, of the boxes and linking the boxes together and things like that. And had started creating a kind of post-apocalyptic person living on a desert planet game, and really liked some of the stuff that I had created in Twine. I mean, Twine is so dynamic. If you can think about it, you can kind of do it in Twine, which is great. I had a inventory system. I had some fortress building. I had dynamic enemy attacks and things like that, and branching storylines. And then I went blind. And the thing about Twine as a program is just not accessible for a blind person to engage with, to kind of move around all the different systems. So my project that I, granted, very beginning type of stages in the grand scheme of things, but it's kind of dead in the water because I just don't know how to advance it because I can't access the program. So it's kind of a big bummer for me. I was just having fun and trying to figure it out. Again, self-taught, didn't know anything, just picked it up, got some YouTube guy who walked me through how to do some of the stuff, and then kind of took it from there and did some of the stuff on my own, just figuring, well, if that's how it works, I could probably do some other stuff. That was pretty cool.
You may already know about this, but I don't actually use the Twine interface. I use a program called Twigo, which is a compiler for Twine stories. So I'm writing my code in a text editor, and then Twigo compiles that into the Twine file. So all that stuff with the little boxes and arrows, I've stopped using that in favor of doing everything in a text editor.
Interesting.
You might be able to try that, and that might work for you.
All right, I'll have to explore. We'll talk about that offline. I don't want to want to bore people on that, but yeah, that's interesting. I mean, because again, it was a fun. I mean, it's fun to just try to figure it out, and I really liked that part of it. Now, the other thing that I find interesting now is a Twigo that allows you to publish it onto the App Store, because as far as I knew, Twine really didn't allow you to go from Twine to putting something up on the Apple App Store.
Twine itself doesn't. I used Vault Builder to convert. It can convert an HTML application into an app. So Twine makes an HTML application, then Vault Builder converts that into an app.
So and I mean, did you figure all of this stuff out like when you were working at your career job for 10 years?
No. The career job was all using the in-house scripting language. So the creative and like general skills are transferable, but the actual technical skills were specific to that job. I worked all this out myself. What happened with the apps is my games are like web games first. When I released my first one called Seed Ship, which is a free game, I had a bunch of people saying this would work well as an app, and can I make this into an app for you? And I thought I'd like to do that myself, so I looked up how to do that. So that became my first Android and iOS app.
Okay, so Seed Ship is, I thought that was only web-based, so that is as an app as well?
But yeah, that was web-based first, and then I made it into an app a few months later.
Okay, nice. Well, that's interesting. So I imagine that's probably, I haven't played that one, but if it's done in kind of the same way, I assume it's probably about as accessible as Beyond the Chiron Gate.
As accessible, if not more so, yes.
Interesting. Well, maybe that'll be the next one I download. And so when you're kind of learning, again, do you just have some background? I mean, are you kind of in the dark, bumbling around trying to figure this all out, or do you have some sense of what you're supposed to do because you have some experience having worked at a gaming company? How much are you, stumbling in the dark? Like, I would be stumbling in the dark because I have no coding background. I have no experience. I have no idea where to go other than, do a Google search. That's about as best I have for resources when I was trying to figure it out. Do you have more resources or more connections to help you out or bounce ideas off? Or
well, I'm in touch with a few people and I bounce ideas off them. I guess I'd say I'm stumbling around in the dark, but my experience make me better at stumbling around in the dark. So I did literally do a Google search for how to turn a Twine game into an app, but my experience makes it better for me to filter out what Google results were more important. But there was a lot of stumbling around in the dark involved.
Yeah, I mean, that's and when you're doing all of this, when you're figuring this all out, I mean, this is just you solo, right? You're kind of a one-man shop putting this all together, right?
Yes, for this latest game, I hired someone to do the cover art, and I bought an asset pack of music. But apart from that, work.
And so, it's actually interesting you say music. So a lot of times I turn music off just because as a blind person, I'm relying on the Apple Voiceover to kind of tell me what's going on. And so that the music can be a little bit distracting from my standpoint. But for sound, it's music only. There aren't other sounds in it, right?
I experimented with adding sound effects, but it just didn't seem right. And so I gave up. I just added music.
And I imagine that's the same sort of thing. Like just to kind of explain to people who may not know how a game comes together, is you can go out and either record your own sound effects, or you buy these asset packs that give you the rights to kind of put the sounds into your game. That's basically how it works, right?
There were lots of good asset packs out there. A few for free, some better ones for pay.
And so do you buy, when you're buying sounds, let's just say, would you buy them sound by sound, or is there like, here's space sounds, and you get 20 sounds in a pack or something?
Yeah, I don't know about other developers. I would buy a pack of sounds, because then all the sounds will be in the same style and they work together. I think if you buy individual sounds, not only is it probably going to be more expensive and more work to get them, but you'll get sounds that might not work together stylistically.
Right. That's a good point. I never really thought of that. Now, to give a sense too, because I always like to, we are players of games, we're not makers of games. And like what I'd like to do in this interview series is really kind of explain to people and show to people all the work that goes into it. I mean, first off, just right off the bat, I mean, it's taken you 3 years to put this together. It's not, it's a lot of work, a lot of time and effort. I bet you there's millions of lines of code in this thing. When you're buying a sound pack, or even, you just went with the music, I mean, how much does that sort of thing cost you before you even putting this game out for people to buy? You're laying out some of your own hard-earned time as well as money to even get this thing off the ground.
The sound pack, I think it was, I think I bought two music packs that are, I think, $10 each, which is pretty cheap. But buying a pre-made asset pack means that the music isn't unique to my game. You might play a different music.
Sorry, and then you said you did some cover art too.
Cover art cost, I think it was $200. And that was my biggest expense, but I thought it was kind of worth it.
Now, again, I'm fully blind, so as far as I know, everything is just text. But is there other graphics that are in the game, like when you're going and seeing the list of the 6 different star systems? Is it just words, or there's pictures of black holes and stars and planets, in it as well?
Yeah, there were little icons, which again, I didn't make them myself, but those are a free resource I found online. There are icons for lots of things, but I've made sure that the icon is never the only way information is conveyed. It's always just supplemental to the text.
Yeah, I mean, there's from a person who's fully blind, everything was very easily conveyed and understandable as I kind of went through and trying to figure it out, which is really, really great, of being able to get a sense and not feel like I was missing out because something is just graphically presented and not, also with some alternate text to kind of go along with it to convey that information to me as well. So now the thing that people will see when they play this game is it is a very branching type of story, in that, as you move through in each solar system that you explore, you start discovering more information, data, as you mentioned earlier, which then starts opening up, different information about the species you run into, and, different information that allows you to then expand your ship with different equipment. And there's a lot of branching type of activity that builds the story to a crescendo until you kind of get to the end, which is, discovering, how to stabilize this gate. How did you kind of keep track of all that? I mean, there is a lot going on, and even in the descriptions of a planet, each time you click on an event at the planet, the description about the planet changes and adds the new information that you found about that planet.
The game stores a lot of information, but what I did was I made sure all the information is in the same format. So all the game entities, like planets or stars or crew members or your ship or an alien species, they're mostly defined by a list of traits, each of which is just a word. And the game will So when the game outputs a planet description, it just takes that list of traits and converts that into a paragraph of text. When it's picking a new event to happen, it will look at all the relevant traits. So the traits of the planet, of your crew members and so forth, and pick an event that applies to those traits. And as it's making that list of relevant traits, it doesn't really care what's a trait of your crew member and what's a trait of the planet. It just puts them all in one big list. So it is recording a lot of information, but I've made sure all the information is in a form that it can work with in a very versatile way.
So when you have, let's say you come across a enemy species, well, I shouldn't say enemy, but you come across an alien species. The traits that go around that, from the first time I play, let's say I played it once and I find, I'll just make it up, I can't think of a name, a worm-like alien, that has a certain name. Let's just call it, the stars.
Yeah.
The star species has, they're worm-like. They are, painters, and they have all these the description. When I come back the next time and play, is that alien species going to be exactly the same, or those traits are going to be kind of randomly picked off of the list, creating a whole new species that I'll see the next time I play, so that each time I play, it'll be different.
Everything is totally randomized.
Right.
That's meant to be a big draw of the game. Each planet has a random set of traits. Each star system has a random lot of planets. Each species you find has random traits. It's the idea is it's different every time you play.
And a game like this, I imagine, keeping the balance correct, so that when you're going out to a star system and there's six star systems out there, you don't want them all be like, oh, all six have alien life and water, and you don't want to have it where none of them have what you're looking for, or all of them have what you're looking for. So how do you keep like that randomization to be properly balanced? Or even with events with crew, you don't want to be where you're just constantly facing danger and it's like near impossible to survive. There's kind of like you want to have enough tension there, so that there is risk when you're going out, but you don't want it so overwhelming that it feels like it's impossible to win this game. How do you kind of code that to keep the balance intact?
Lots of playtesting. I just play the game again and again and again, and till I'm honestly sick of it. And but if it feels too easy or feels too hard, there are basically numbers I can tweak to adjust that. And in the case of planets in one system, there's also the mechanic of temperature, where planets closer to the star are hotter and ones further away are colder, which means that you're only going to get the oxygen atmosphere in the kind of middle zone. So that means naturally that each system will have a variety of planets, whatever
Yeah, you're looking for those Goldilocks planets who have, moderate temperature, signs of liquid, oxygen mixture in their atmosphere, and maybe not overly high gravity, a moderate gravity. So you're kind of looking for those. So again, as you're playing the game, you can upgrade your ship to start detecting those things. So you're not just randomly going to planets, and once you get there, you find those things out. You kind of, as you upgrade your ship and get deeper into the game, you can start really pinpointing, well, I'm going to focus my time going to the place where I'm most likely going to have success and looking for what I'm looking for. Yeah, that's, as you kind of created this game, 3 years of work, what was the hardest part of kind of putting it all together?
I don't know. I think getting a random planet generator to work well and to generate enough variety of things, because it's a trap you can fall into, is to have lots of things created which are all technically different, but all equally boring. So I had to. It's a hard balancing act to make a random generator that can make things that are all interesting, but also all different.
Right.
And there's enough content in there that you're not going to see it all multiple times in one playthrough.
Yeah, there was interesting. The first time I played through the game again, so I'm fully blind, and there's a lot of good things that are in there, and you can kind of talk whether you had the blind in mind or it just kind of worked out for this. But like when you go visit a planet and it has a series of events, it might say, there's a ring of debris around the planet. Do you want to go check that out? Or there is some volcanic activity on the planet. Do you want to go check that out? And so when it says that on the stuff, if you're in orbit and it says, go check out the ring, and it'll just say, you can just go check it out. If it's something like volcanic that's down on the planet, it'll say land, go visit the planet, or go visit the volcano. So it tells me, oh, I'm going to actually land my ship and, expend the fuel that it tells you, 6 fuel or 10 fuel or whatever it is that you have to do. So it kind of gives me, oh, this action is going to lead to something. And if I'm down the planet and now I say, oh, I want to check out those rings, it'll be telling me, well, you're going to take off in order to go do those. So when those things, as they were created, was that just kind of happenstance that works out great for me as a blind person? Or did you get some feedback that said, hey, I really need to know some more information about what I'm actually doing when I press this link?
So I guess I'm lucky in that I'm working in text-based games, which are mostly accessible to the blind anyway. I did have I'm funding my games partly through Patreon, and so patrons get early access to builds. And so I had one very helpful person say they were blind and playing it, but it mostly worked for them, but could I make a few minor changes? And so I did. If I can make it accessible, I obviously want to. In the case of the icons, in the case of the landing and taking off, for a sighted person, that land or take off is a tiny icon. But I'm just in the habit of any icon, I'll obviously give it alt text to display if you can't display the image or if you're blind. So that just works because I'm in the habit of that kind of accessibility.
Yeah, you said whenever you have an icon, you put some alt text about it. Now, did you learn that just from 10 years of being in the industry, that's kind of a standard that you should be doing for those who are blind who might want to play the game? Or is that something you kind of came across on your own, or through Patreon people mentioned it to you and you started figuring out, oh, I should just do this all the time? How did that come about for you?
That's partly just I just kind of picked up that's good practice for web development, and so I just got in the habit of using it. And also, it's something Twine kind of does, because when you add an image in Twine, you actually can't do that without specifying alt text. It won't let you. So that's, I guess, a case where the game engine is forcing me to be accessible. Not that I wouldn't want to, but you have to have alt text.
Right, but even in that case, you have it must be dynamic alt text, because if you're in space, it's not telling you to land. If you're down on the planet, it's telling you to take off. So it must be understanding where you are in relation to the planet to know what kind of alt text to be providing as well, right?
I don't think I have any actual dynamic alt text as such. It'll display the icon or not, and each icon will have alt text when it appears. And obviously, there's no alt text if there's no icon.
Okay, so it's more like the icon is dynamic versus
the
alt text.
icon is dynamic. The text goes with the icon when the icon appears.
And you said through Patreon you had some people who kind of beta tested it for you. How many people did that for you? Kind of helped you work through the kinks by actually playing the game?
I think about a dozen people. If you go into I credited them all in the game credits. I don't remember exactly, but it's about a dozen.
And so it's, you said you had the other, what was it? I'm sorry, Siege Ship was the other game?
That was my first game. Beyond the Chiron Gate is kind of a spiritual successor to that. So Siege Ship turned out to be pretty popular kind of by accident. And then I started working on a game where the premise was like Siege Ship, but big enough I could charge for it. So if you play Siege Ship, it's kind of similar to Chiron Gate, but smaller and more primitive, I guess.
Hmm. Were they both sponsored through Patreon? Is that how you kind of get the stuff up and off the ground and running?
Yes.
And so, this accessibility, I mean, as you said, when you're dealing with a kind of a text-based type of game, there is some embedded accessibility that it already kind of naturally comes with. But, was there any particular part of adding accessibility that, you found difficult, or you found really kind of made the game better for the blind? Oh, I didn't have that, but someone told me about it, and now it's a better experience for those who are playing.
I think the main concern for accessibility was making sure all information was in the text. So the game uses color to its full extent, and it uses the layout of text on the page, but I made sure that's never the only way you can get information. Everything is in the text as well. Also, someone with us playing with the screen reader told me about what were they called, but the little kind of content icons, not like content labels rather, that tell you what different areas of the page are meant to be. And so I added some of them. I don't know how well they work, but I did try.
Are you talking about like headers and things like that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've played the game. The one part that is, you eventually kind of get it as the game expands, particularly, let's say your ship upgrades. I mean, that as you get deep in the game, there's a lot of things that you can upgrade your ship with, which can be kind of a long list to kind of span through. So, more headers in there would be, it would be making it just a little bit more efficient to navigate. I didn't have any problems playing the game and completing the game. Nothing hindered me. It was just in some cases got a lot of swiping that you had to kind of figure out.
It's kind of for a sighted person, a lot of the text is kind of meant to be skim read.
Right.
But
sure.
Obviously, if you're playing with like a screen reader, you'll get it at the same rate, I guess.
Right. Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things that you have is you might have already done this upgrade. So I'm probably a sight person could see, oh, I've already upgraded these first 5 things. Let me just quickly skim down to the 6th thing, but I got to listen to all 5 things to know, is that something I need to upgrade or not upgrade? So it just kind of slows the thing. But that's not an untypical thing for a blind person to have to kind of face. There's just, sometimes there's more information than we need, but more information is always better than less information in these cases. So, in kind of creating a game that is accessible, again, you kind of had some embedded, but for other developers out there, I mean, what do you see as kind of the roadblocks that a developer faces in making their game accessible? Is it just sometimes a lack of knowledge? They don't have a blind Patreon person who says, "Hey, can you add this?" and they just don't know to do it, or is it difficult, technically to do it in some cases? What do you think are the kind of main roadblocks that we don't have more games that have accessibility built into them?
I think assuming the developer cares about accessibility in the first place, I think it is a lack of knowledge of things that you might assume would be accessible, but aren't for some reason you can't think of. And so any feedback about what is and isn't accessible about a game is helpful. Yeah, for games that aren't just text-based, it must be a whole lot harder. I don't know how I'd even go about making it accessible.
I had one developer tell me, I mean, once he learned about accessibility, because he was at, first he created his game, he, sighted person, he didn't think about accessibility at all. And he had a blind person reach out to him and said, look, I can play a good portion of your game, but not all of it. Would you add these accessibility? So he kind of really got into figuring out the accessibility. And he said,
Mhm.
I would just sit with a blindfold on and try playing the game using the voiceover feature. And, that taught me a lot about where there's the trouble points. He just played
Yeah,
it over and over again until he felt like he could create a good experience, um,
I
just using voiceover.
I did try playing the game with a screen reader, and so I could confirm that all the text was kind of accessible. I was able to get at it, but the experience of using a screen reader was so strange to me that
Yeah.
it was hard for me to tell what bits are strange because of my game and what bits are strange because I'm just not used to using that software.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a learning curve,
Yeah.
to it. Might be good from a developer standpoint is just maybe sit with somebody who is blind and have
Oh
them go
yeah.
through the game, and then they can say, well, this isn't right, not
If I was
because it's a weird
if
experience, but
if I was a game studio with the resources like bring in testers, that's something I definitely want to do. As a solo indie dev, I'm not sure I can, but talking to people who have played this in the game is very helpful.
and what do you think we as a blind and visually impaired set of gaming community, what can we do to help developers make their games accessible? I mean, how do we reach out and educate them? How do we maybe provide resources to them to help them beta test? What are ways that we can help out making more games accessible? Because there's more games that are accessible, that just means there's more games for us to play.
Um, yeah, I don't want to kind of expect the blind community to do kind of unpaid labor to help developers, but um, just letting us know what does and doesn't work is helpful, especially if there's something that's this minor change would make it much more accessible. The developer probably just hasn't thought of that, and it could be that they'd be happy to make the change if they knew.
Now, when you're, as you said, an indie developer, you're out on your own, trying to do this all yourself. When you get to, monetizing this game, I mean, how do you decide, I'm going to make it just a one-time purchase, that gets you the entire game and all the content, or I'm going to do this, but you can buy an upgrade pack that, lets you get, data quicker, or, whatever the case may be. I mean, how do you decide what's the right economic structure for the game that you're putting out?
Um, I think that kind of thing has to be decided like when you first design the game, because if I was going to monetize it with microtransactions, that has to be baked into the design from the very start, and that wasn't the kind of game I wanted to make. So for me, the only option for this game was a one-time purchase. That's the kind of game I prefer to buy and play, and that's the kind of game that lets me make whatever kind of game the game should be, so that once you've bought it and start playing it, then everything is then it's designed to be a good game rather than designed to make you want to buy more stuff. Also, making it a one-time purchase was the technically easiest thing for me,
Sure.
because then the buying and paying for it is all on the App Store side, rather than in the actual game itself, which I'm honestly not sure how I would even do. It's not something Twine is set up for.
Right. And I mean, the one thing that I find, the blind community, we like to know that a game is accessible before we buy it, right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of times that we'll, as a community, will be turned off just paying right from the get-go up front because, okay, we just paid $9.99 or whatever the price may be, and now we can't even play this game. It's completely inaccessible, or it's got a game-breaking, bug to it.
I totally understand that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's why I like, particularly when I can, get a game and play it and, let people know, yes, I mean, you'll pay right from the beginning, but this is a fully accessible game. You don't have to worry about that aspect. with Beyond the Chiron Gate, it is fully accessible from the, right from the get-go right through the very ending of the game. So that's one thing that I'd like to be able to do as I learn about these games, make sure people are aware of that, because there might be some people who are just kind of gun shy to lay down money when they're not really sure if they could even play the game. But this one definitely is. Sometimes, and again, you might have a technical difficulty with the twine, but some people would be like, all right, the first 3 planets you can go visit, and it's free. But if you want to go visit from the 4th on, now that's when the pay transaction happens. So people can get a sense of what the game is before they have to pay. But there might be some technical difficulties of doing that.
I think the way I would do that would be to have a whole separate demo version, which you can get for free, and then if you want to buy it, you then go and buy the
real
game separately.
But that probably costs money to have both on the App Store or whatever.
I think they would have to be separate entities on the App Store, which would maybe be awkward. I could more easily do that on like the web marketplace on itch.io or for web games like that.
And I imagine Apple probably, for every sale that you do, they take a cut. They probably have some annual, just to have it up on the store. They probably want you to pay something as well, I imagine. You do pay, but I don't think you pay per game. You pay to be an Apple developer. So I don't think having a separate version would cost me money, but it would be kind of awkward and Yeah, to be really clear that someone doesn't, think the demo is the real game and then it's giving you a bad rating or something like that. Yeah. Be really, very careful about it. So, the game's been out a couple of weeks. Like I said, I love the game. As I said, it's this great mix of space exploration, danger, upgrading, kind of role-playing aspects of it. It's got, if you like the Expanse, it's got that kind of gate feel and aliens and who created the gates. I mean, there's a lot kind of, going on that brings a lot of wonderful genres together. So really, really fun game from my standpoint. A great success of a game to play. But how do you judge the success of your games that come out, whether it be this one or your previous game?
Again, if I was a studio, I'd probably have some kind of marketing department and like with a success metric with graphs I can look at. As a solo dev, more interested in the creative side, it's more kind of a case of vibes of I'm pleased with the number of sales I've had, but I'm kind of more pleased with seeing feedback from people saying they like the game, or people sharing it with their friends on forums or something. I feel it's a success from that point of view.
How do you get you do things like this, I'm sure, interviews where people reach out and say, I'd like to interview about the game, but I mean, how do you get the marketing? How do you get the word out as there's thousands of games that are released on the App Store each day. So how do you get yours heard above all that noise?
If you find out, let me know. That is a difficult thing. And I went and mentioned the game on relevant forums and subreddits, and I publicized it to the people who played C-Chip. C-Chip kind of went viral kind of by accident, and so I don't think I can replicate that again. So it's I think a lot of it is a case of luck, so I just have to hope.
Well, in my efforts to help you, because like I said, I really love this game, and I was just talking to somebody else who has this an interview that I'm posting on Wednesday. This person, Andy Robertson, who does the Family Gaming Database, where he does a lot of games out, and he has tags for games that are accessible, and so he's always looking for accessible games. So I told him about your game as a game that just came out. It's accessible, lots of fun. And so hopefully we'll see that out on his database that gets, I think, 10,000 views a day, he said. So, you know, hopefully we can get it out there for you. But, you know, I really love it. I'm going to be putting my review out on the Sunday after we post this interview, and then obviously be sharing it with my community of blind and visually impaired gamers. As you know, here's a fun, different, you know, one of the things that's really frustrating for the blind community is there's a lot of games that are accessible, but they're so dumbed down and they're so simplistic that it's hardly fun. You know, just because
Yeah,
we're blind doesn't mean we don't have our mental capacity, you know, and want a challenging, interesting game. And so this is a very challenging, interesting game. It's different every time you play it. There feels like there's real stakes that are going on. You get really upset when you have to go to the, you know, the memorial for one of your astronauts who died on a space mission. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, real fun in playing this game, which I really like. And so, you know, I will be telling people about it because I found it really enjoyable as an experience that I can share and have the same experience as a sighted person has that plays your game. You know, we can have that same experience. We can talk about your game and in the same ways, which a lot of times the blind community can't, because the game is kind of, in essence, different when it's only presented in an auditory way as opposed to an auditory / visual way.
yeah. I think that is a marketing trick I've learned from this. That if you make a game that's accessible to the blind, they will all share it with each other on their phones and get tons of blind people buying it.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, definitely, because there's, I mean, in all the games that come out, I mean, of those thousands of games that come out today,
Mhm.
you know, a couple dozen might be accessible, and that's
Yeah,
it. So there is a very limited pool that we have available to us versus the, you know, general population. So when we find a good game, you know, it does get passed around, and people talk about it and people, you know, play it because you know, there aren't that many that are you know, really compelling for us to engage in. So, and we're just as passionate about the games as
mhm.
everybody else. You know?
Yeah.
So you've just gotten this out. You know, I should probably give you some rest. But what's next? What, you know, what you put the game out 2 weeks ago? Is it more stuff in this world, or are you going to move on to a different type of game, or you know, what's kind of next on the horizon for you?
So I have said I'm going to make release at least one content update for this game. Um, so I've got that in the works, but I'm also starting work on my next game, which my current plan is for it to be not quite as big as this one, but still fairly substantial. And my idea is it's about being the ruler of a declining space empire.
Mm. Um, and so kind of like a civilization management, are you supposed to be trying to bring it back from the brink of its collapse, or?
It's like Chiron Gate was kind of based on the first section of civilization management games we are exploring.
Mhm.
Um, my idea for this new game is to be able to make a game about what logically happens after the end of those games.
Mhm.
So you win, your civilization dominates the galaxy, but every civilization eventually falls, and so my idea is to make a game about the process of that fall. Um, but it's in the very early stages. Maybe it doesn't pan out.
Now, the stuff that you've done for this game, does that allow the next game to come out, you know, not in 3 years? I mean, can you recycle things and
I,
reuse code so that, you know, you start producing things quicker and quicker because
I
you,
hope so. Yeah, I've learned a great deal from this game, and I'm definitely going to take that into my next games and hopefully make them both faster and better than they would have otherwise been.
yeah, I mean, I liked this game very much. I liked the you know, the way that you could upgrade the ship, because you know, you can kind of choose a different path. You know, I can upgrade my ship in a different way than you might have upgraded your ship.
Yeah,
Um, your astronauts kind of naturally, you know, become uh, more experienced, but it, you know, even greater if we could have also upgraded them. Like, you know, they level up and now I choose what way I want them to be better at whatever they're doing. That would have been cool too. You know, as kind of a thought process for the next game as well.
yeah. that would have been cool, but I think that would have made it too complicated. I'm just one guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, another, yeah, yeah. I don't know what I was going to say. Yes.
So again, for everyone, Beyond the Chiron Gate, it's out on the App Store now. Is it on Android as well?
Yes, it's also an Android, and it's also downloadable as an app for PCs and Macs.
Okay, great. So all of those places for my group, we concentrate on Apple, but it's definitely out on Apple, downloadable. And I always kind of like to close with just any kind of closing thoughts you have, about the state of gaming or state of accessibility, or about your experience of creating a game. Just anything that you want to share with the community.
I guess thanks for noticing my game. And I don't know. Sorry, I don't have any closing thoughts.
All right, that's fine. I mean, again, you've been working hard, so you take a little break, but we are excited to see what your next game is. I will share with you, you're always welcome to come out to our group and let us know any updates you have about the game or your next game, particularly if they're accessible or about.
Make sure they are. They're going to be text-based because that's the medium I work in, and I've learned how important accessibility is from this, and so I'll be making sure everything is accessible.
Yeah, no, that's great. So yeah, please come to the group, share your updates. We'd love to hear from you. And anytime you have some new information, if you want to, reach out to me, I can also share it to the community. So again, thank you so much for, doing this interview series with us, telling us about Beyond the Chiron Gate, which again, exceptional space exploration type game. And we look forward to this one as well as all the future games that you put out.